Hey YouTube. Today I want to talk about the Torah, which is the first 5 books in the Bible, and just how are we supposed to view the Torah? Is it abolished? When Yeshua came, did he totally destroy it and we don't have to abide by it anymore? Is it even in his commands anymore? I mean, are we free, so-called, as many Christians say? But I think what we're free from is sin and eternal damnation. We're not free from God's commands and his statutes and his Sabbaths and his true feasts. When Yeshua came, he was Jewish. He followed the feast. There's so many scripture where he went down and celebrated Passover with the apostles and the disciples and all that stuff. And even after he died and rose, the apostles, Peter and all them, there's scripture in Acts and in various places where they celebrated Passover and tabernacles and stuff like that. So they celebrated his true feast days, not Christmas, not Easter, which didn't come into play until Constantine, the emperor of Rome, came in and established Christianity in Rome and stopped the persecution in Rome, which, established Roman Catholicism and stuff like that. That was years down the line, and that stuff is pagan. And our society is so infiltrated with pagan cultures that we just accept it, we twist it, and we turn it into what we think God might like us to worship him. But in the Bible it says so many times God does not want us to worship him the way that other people worship their gods. And other people were worshiping their gods by doing things such as, like, now we set up a Christmas tree, or, just different things on Christmas and Easter, the bunny, the eggs, that kind of stuff. And he really wants us to worship him in spirit and truth, not the way other nations and not the way other non-believers. I mean, think about it, people. Non-believers celebrate Christmas. Non-believers celebrate Easter in the same way that a Christian does. And we shouldn't be celebrating Yahweh, worshiping Yahweh in the same way. And I know it's very hard to hear, and not a lot of people want to hear this. At first it was very hard for me to hear, but once I started reading the scriptures, I truly found out that I want to worship Yahweh and Yeshua in the way that they want to be worshipped, not the way that I want to worship them. But anyways, the Torah. Christ did not he did not abolish the Torah. I have a few scriptures here that say in Proverbs 28:4 says, "Those who abandon the Torah praise the wicked, but those who keep the Torah fight them." Proverbs 4:2 say, "For I give you good instruction, do not forsake my Torah." Romans 3, "Do we then nullify Torah by faith? May it never be. On the contrary, we establish the Torah." That means that we live by the Torah. We don't just have faith in Yeshua. That's not it. We can't just profess him with our lips and then our hearts are turned far from him. Sure, we have to have a pure heart towards him, and that is following the Torah. In his Torah, it's burdensome. It's not grievous. They are his commands to keep us healthy and modest and people of him and set apart. In his Torah are guidelines for our health. He wants to be involved in everything in your life. Even the things that you eat, the way you dress, says where your heart is. It says if you're a part of the world or if you're not. And as a follower of Yeshua, you should be able to tell that you're a follower of Yeshua standing by a non-believer just by the way you dress. Just by that, you should be able to tell. Because we are set apart and we are different from the world, and we will be called different in all kinds of names, and it is hard, but we endure because we love Yeshua. And hold on, some more. "Do not think that I have come to abolish the Torah or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to complete them. Yes, indeed, I tell you that until heaven and earth pass away, not so much as a stroke will pass from the Torah, not until everything that must happen has happened. So whoever disobeys the least of these commands and words, and teaches others to do so, will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever obeys them and so teaches will be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Yeshua did not come to destroy his own Father's law. Yeshua is one with the Father. Yeshua is God. And why would he come And why would he say, oh, never mind, I changed? Because in the scriptures it says Yahweh never changes. He has not changed. His commands and his statutes are still for today. He told Abraham that his statutes were for all generations, not just for that time, but for us too. So, let's see. Matthew 7:14. When Yeshua taught how narrow the door and straight the road that leads to life, and few are those who find it. He is saying that there is really, really a strict, narrow way to Yeshua. If we confess with our lips and our heart, we will desire to follow Yeshua, to follow the Torah. Sure, we are not all going to be perfect in the Torah. We are not going to be all perfect in God's law. But if we love Him, we will not keep on deliberately sinning, and we want to please Him, not the world. And pleasing Him is not burdensome. It's not religion. It's not strict rules. It is for our benefit, and He loves us, and He wants to bless us with the things in the Torah. Therefore, my computer is being weird. Therefore, what are we to say? That the Torah is sinful? Heaven forbid. Rather, the function of the Torah was that without it, I would not have known what sin is. For example, I would not have become conscious of what greed is if the Torah had not said, thou shalt not covet, Romans 7:7. So we see there that they were saying that without the Torah, I wouldn't know what I should be doing, because the Torah is our guidelines for life, and the Torah is not forgotten. God does not change. Again, He doesn't change. So why would He come and tell us things and then change them? That's not holding up to what He said. He is perfect. Acts 24. But this indeed, I, Paul, acknowledge that in the same doctrine of which they speak, I do serve the Elohim of my fathers, believing all things written in the Torah and in the prophets. See, after Christ's resurrection, Paul and all the other apostles were still Torah observant. Yeshua was Torah observant. He didn't eat pork and unclean foods. And a lot of people will say there's that verse in there about not eating, or God made unclean foods clean. But if you read ahead of that, he was actually talking about the Jewish traditions of not washing your hands. If you didn't wash your hands before you ate, you made a clean food unclean. But Yeshua said, you're following traditions of men and not my word, that whatever He says is clean, and whatever He says is unclean is clean, not just washing your hands. That's not what that was saying. It wasn't saying, oh, I've come to make foods clean. And some versions of the Bible do say that. I've made all foods clean. That's not what He was saying, because there were still clean and unclean foods. It was just that the Pharisees were saying in their own tradition, trying to make those foods unclean because they didn't wash their hands before. So you've got to read the scriptures in context and read it all throughout, not just bits and pieces, and take what you want and fit it in with what your church teaches or what your pastor teaches, etc., etc., etc. I mean, you've got to totally do the work yourself. I mean, it's that simple, and you can't just believe every spirit. Test the spirits and truly know what you're saying, truly know what you're celebrating, and the love of Yeshua will fill your heart, and your eyes will truly be opened, and you will see a lot of the falseness in the world, and then you will come to love Yeshua totally in spirit and truth. In Daniel it says that the wicked will keep doing wickedly, but only the wise shall understand. So that's all I have for this, but Yeshua did not come to abolish the Torah. So just think on that, research it, search out the scriptures.